Good evening, Music Multiverse listeners, and welcome to Beyond Your Radio. And it's another album listen challenge. Two panelists have challenged each other with albums they've not heard, attempting to expose each other to something maybe in their wheelhouse that they haven't heard yet, something completely off their radar, just to get things rolling. The people will explain with the record that they received and what they thought of it before they even listened to it. Give us the genre of music, some prior expectations. Maybe even some of the history they might have behind it, and then they're gonna rate that album on artwork 0 to 5, the flow of music 0 to 5, the musicianship, band and melody 0 to 5, accessibility 0 to 5, which means how easy was it to get into listening to. The overall rating then by the listener for a total score of 25 points, but we don't have to worry about that because it's not like we're keeping score. Let me introduce the panelists for tonight. We have Jeffrey Johnson. Jeff is back. This will be his final turn for a while because he has been the GOAT on this episodes for the last at least 3 or 4, right? And then Alex is back. He's getting his first album listen challenge in. He's
and not hosting this time.
Yes, I'm disappointed because you hosted rather well. So you'll be doing this again, I'm sure. So everybody good tonight? We're all fine?
Oh, great.
5 by 5?
For sure.
Okay, let's get started. We're going to start with Alex. What album did Jeff give you?
Well, this one should be on not That's Your Band Name, but That's Your Album Name. And it definitely tossed the salad when I say it is Brain Salad Surgery by Emerson Lake and Palmer. Album was from 1973. It's in the wheelhouse of, for me, definitely gave a more classic sound. So I'm going into this again, like our listeners know, completely blind to this album. One that actually is probably sitting on vinyl somewhere down in this basement now that I think about it. Didn't care to look for it. I meant to, and then I realized everything's not alphabetical in this basement, so the odds of finding that were a needle in a haystack. But this album, I will say to preface, the score did not reflect what I thought of it. I enjoyed it, but in a more separate than together way. I think if I heard the tracks individually and spaced out with things in between them, I'd maybe enjoy them more. But for the concept of it being an album, I don't know that it fit where I was going with it. So some of the notes I had written down as I listened to it were that track 1 reminded me of the Beatles a little bit, had an orchestra-ish feel, which is ironic considering the back half of the album. And I was really surprised by the range that the entire album had. And I thought that that the first track had, where, Jerusalem was very up and down and wove through a few different sounds, which seemed to be a theme for a lot of the tracks of this album. Track 2 made me feel like I was listening to the soundtrack of some techie Atari video game a little bit. It was odd.
Atari had not been invented yet, just so we're clear.
Correct. It was odd that it had no vocals. So this is where it reminded me of the second band that I wanted to reference out of this. The song had a lot of feel of Boston's Foreplay / Long Time. I got a lot of that organ out of it when I was listening to that track, and it made me think of before that song picks up in the transition of the two tracks, 2 parts. Track 3, I didn't like the hard cut from 2 into 3. I thought that hurt the flow a little bit. Gave me a little bit of Pink Floyd vibes. Into track 4, which I thought was a combo of like a Pink Floyd, The Who-ish sound to it. But the track 4 is where it started to sound like a playwright, and where it started to sound like it had a little bit of that live stage music sound to it. I thought the keyboard really stood out during that track. And that's, again, a huge theme to this is between the synth, the keyboard, any sort of piano key type feel. So track 5, the synth really was standing out. I thought track 6, again, now we're starting to get back into where this feels like an orchestra with the arrangements and the pieces to it. Was very Who Boston-ish. Oregon standing out. Good guitar in the track, I noticed, was starting to layer in. But I started to question around this time whether I would want to see this album performed live. I started to say, all right, is this going to be really cool because of all the pieces and the fact there's only 3 of them? Or am I going to be thrown off by the fact that it's like I can't really get into a rhythm here with it? Track 7, I wrote, whoa, sound change. Very drastic leap. Felt like they were riffing the piano and it was a little bit of an orchestra jam. So it was kind of cool in that sense. But and this will go into my scoring, but then the final track I thought it had a Beatlesy lyrical sound to it. Where it kind of got back to, again, in track 1 where I thought it sat. So I guess I'll start by saying with the first part of the score that it took a dent on was the flow. I didn't really feel like this album meshed from track to track. I thought the hard cuts, I thought they could have interlaced a little bit in a way that would have made more sense for me. So I gave it actually a 2 on the flow. The musicianship got a 4. And the only knock on that was that I would have loved to have heard something stand out a little more than the keys in this. But at the same time, I acknowledge, again, for 3 people, I thought this was well put together for that amount of people to the amount of sound I heard. Access, I actually gave it a 3 because I was having a hard time finding the legit part of it. Just because of all the different variations and cuts, and I was trying to find a version of it that was actually a rip from vinyl and give me a true feel from the era, and I was able to find it finally, but there's so many variations of it. I gave it the artwork a 4. Didn't quite understand the theme, but it was very well done, and there was different variations I was able to find of it. Overall, I actually did score the album a 4. So that gave it a total score of 17. And so for me, that's why I say, like, I scored the album, I scored it a 4 overall, but when the score comes out to a 17, it sounds low. So the score didn't quite reflect the fact that I actually did enjoy it. It was different to listen to. There was just certain things I nitpicked that I would have loved to have heard something a little bit more from them, and this one tied together rather than so separate. And especially with side 1 and side 2 of a record being a part 1 was to end this first side, and part 2, 3, and 4 on the back. I don't know. There's just little intricacies like that I was a little harsher about.
Alex, what did you think it was going to be when you heard what you were getting?
Punk.
No, because I knew Emerson Lake and Palmer. So actually, the backstory behind this is when I had told my mother that I was doing this album. She actually said that when my dad, he had these 4-foot tall speakers in our house, 2 of them on either side of the player, that to test them anytime they got fixed, he would play Emerson, Lake and Palmer, which is why I totally understood that listening to this album, because of the different array of sounds you could hear throughout them and how much it changed. So I kind of went into it expecting a lot of sound. I didn't expect it to remind me of like Boston and the Who, though. And I thought that was a little bit strange. I was not expecting that part of it, but I was expecting something a little more from that era that it was. And
well, I will add a couple of things. Number 1, I believe the recording of it and the conceptual design, they were somewhere where they were playing it live. Okay. They were, I don't know whether they were in between something or whatever they were doing. They had a stage for this when they did it. The idea of welcome to the show, that's all in there. that they were, I don't know how to say this. I don't know. Obviously everything's live recorded, but they had that mindset that they were in front of an audience. That was what the gimmick was.
Interesting.
I just remember that, and I will say this to you when you say the musicianship, right? Yeah, the keys hog. He's a hog, and sometimes it's a bit much. But I went back and listened to it because I hadn't listened to it in a while, and this is quintessentially a progressive album, but it has a lot of jam to it, and it got a huge amount of airplay during its time and still does today. And I think sometimes people forget who the band is that actually is playing it. I do believe some people mistake them for the Who when that song comes on. If they don't know music that well, they're, because I really think it was in that wheelhouse and vein. But I mean, obviously with the keyboards and everything going on, we can. Jeff, what was your hoping to, what's your take? Because I know you.
No, I agree and disagree with a lot what you guys said, but it's because I also believe a lot of this has to do with generations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was born when I was 20 years old, I believe, or so when this came out. And it was very much a type of album that I took to my heart, and I took the band to my heart, and I have seen them live on 2 occasions. And they are, especially with the light show and stuff like that, they had the same thing going on as Floyd did, and they were very much like Floyd in some directions. I never was really in love with their singing. I happen to like piano or strong piano, where a lot of people are playing. There's a lot of playing that emphasizes piano. So, but I like the album. But if I was going to score it, which I did just to see, I came up with 19. So,
because you gave the album cover a 5.
huh?
Did you give the album cover a 5? Really?
Wow.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of missed.
It's interesting that you scored that a 19, especially because you were the high scorer on the last album challenge that I hosted.
But there's things I like. Progression, I think whoever put this album together song by song really screwed up. Okay? It definitely didn't progress right. I gave that a 2.
That's where I had the 2 in the flow, because I didn't think that it had that.
My musicianship, I gave a 5.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys they're especially either together on they're fabulous musicians.
What'd you have on the excess of that then?
Huh?
What'd you have on the excess of that then? Because if I was a point lower on the musicianship, because I had a 4 and you had a 5.
He gave it a 5
for the access. Okay.
It's in his wheelhouse. It's accessible for him. It's kind of, and that's an era thing. He's right.
Yeah.
Well, and I really, that's the other thing before I listened to this and knowing you, Jeff, from a few episodes already and getting to know you through the show. And I really tried to scale myself back a little bit and try to envision what it's like growing up in that era of music.
Never gonna.
And it's not exactly as I'm listening to it, I'm like, I can't place myself there.
And it's like I had to buy a birthday present for an 18-year-old, and I have no clue anymore because what does anybody like? What are
you can't even buy a pack of smokes for 18-year-olds anymore.
You can here, but they're $9.
And that's too expensive for a gift anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Here's your one pack of cigarettes.
I can make double that work in a Mighty Taco for an hour.
But now we're gonna have to charge Mighty Taco for the plug.
Yeah. out here, McDonald's is paying $22 an hour because they can't find employees. So.
Yeah, when I come for vacation, I'm gonna work there just to make some money.
Well, for $22, I want to know what you think of Crack the Sky.
Well, we will start that right now. Okay, Crack the Sky. Love-hate relationship all the way through the listens. I'm not a fan. I listened to it. I'm gonna guess maybe 15 times, possibly a little bit more. I just couldn't get into it. There's no feel to me. I don't know what it was. A lot of the songs didn't make any sense to me. The musicianship was good, but I did not. It was like I was listening to a really well-produced garage band. I just didn't see flair like I see with lots of other bands. It just didn't excite me. Now, Mark talked to me about it, because I talked to Mark 2 or 3 times about this album, what he thought of it, because I don't like to give bad ratings unless there's reasons to it. So I don't think I'm going to rate this high, but I'm just going to be honest with you. The album cover was probably the highest rating. I'll give it a 4. Okay. Musicianship, I give a 2.5. I found so many mistakes listening to it. Slight, unless it was on purpose. But to me, to my listening ear, it didn't sound correct. I'm sure the band is very tight. I've read all the reviews I can get on them and stuff like that. And a lot of the critics liked it, but then again, a lot of critics hated it. It is completely out of my wheelhouse in some directions, and in some directions. It's considered, I guess, the genre on this is progressive rock. So let me go through a couple of the tracks that I was thinking of. Hold On was miserable. I didn't like it at all.
Interesting. That's one of my favorites of it too.
Yeah, well, it's okay. You may need some brain salad surgery or something like that. So, Surf City, how freaking ridiculous of a song. Oh my God, I nearly vomited. It's just terrible. How can somebody put this on a record that's like, and then you have like Sea Epic and She's a Dancer. You know, it's like progressive rock, but I don't know what they're progressing to. I just don't see it. I through the album, I could see some sort of flow, but in my book, it was an idiotic flow. I just couldn't grasp this album, and I honestly tried. It wasn't. I've heard a lot worse groups, so we're not going to go there. But I almost could promise you that I won't listen to this record the rest of my life. Okay, it's just not something that's appealing to me. Flow on this record, I'm going to give a 3.
Interesting.
Accessibility, well, I had no problem finding it. I had no problem finding other reviews to read stuff. So accessibility, somebody be a 4. And the overall,
I'm gonna change that to say ease of listening. I keep meaning to say that it has nothing to do with how easy you can find it. It has to do with, is it easy? Can you listen to it immediately and know what's going on?
Let's not change that, because then it'll drop to 1.
That's what it deserves. I would actually say that, well, here, go ahead. I mean, you're going.
Well, let me finish with, so the overall is a 3.
So it's 7, 13. So it's like an 18. Is that what that is, basically? You had a 3, a 4, a 3.
16.
16. Sorry. 16.
Yeah. I was going to say, we should.
I don't do halves. We're not doing halves. All right. So if you do 2.5, it's a 2. All right.
No, you have to go on the other side then.
Oh no, it's a 2. No, can't go halvesies. Right down to 2.
Nope. Yeah.
I would. Okay, so I'll let Alex give his how he came to know this band, because obviously it's not his generation.
Yeah, this one's one of the first albums I ever heard growing up, and it didn't even really come from necessarily this album. It came from a compilation album that was of their first 5 records, and it was really 2 main albums that I had really heard a lot of from that compilation. There was this one, and it was, I'm blanking on the name right now, but it was the next one after. And between those 2, I picked this one because I have listened to it in full, being that I was so curious from the compilation album how the rest of it would sound. So it's not necessarily that it surprises me that you wouldn't like the whole album full through. This one's more of a nostalgia pick for me, especially trying to find something from my early listening that would be in your wheelhouse in terms of era, and maybe something that hadn't been as popular, because I know this album wasn't, it's very nichey in that way, be it region, because they're a West Virginia band, and so I kind of affiliate that with the Northeast here. I affiliate that geographically in terms of, you just divide it all up into quadrants, say they're kind of up here. So I knew it was hit or miss whether someone had heard of it. And for you, I was like, all right, I'll take my chances that Jeff hasn't heard this yet. And yeah, just kind of took a stab at it and threw it that way. But I will argue Surf City and Hold On I always liked, because in the first episode of anything that we did for Beyond Your Radio, what I talked about was the seamless flow between songs. How I liked when one track and the second, you didn't know where the break was, because it just went right through if you had them playing in sequential order. And that 2-track sequence was what I first thought of when I made that comment, was from that album. So
I can't help you there. I don't recall the sequencing. All I remember is when I listened to this album, I'm still trying to figure out how Rolling Stone magazine believes that this is the top 50 progressive rock albums of all time.
That's another thing. I read a lot of reviews, and
it's a very love-hate album.
Comparing them to Steely Dan,
it's a little too much. Yes,
way too much.
I think that person probably is no longer with Rolling Stone magazine. It's on an island somewhere.
No, he's the lead teller at McDonald's.
And he's also the background vocalist for the band.
I will say this, because I have it in the album format. I do not have it on CD. I think the second, something about Animal, right? The second one, Animal Notes, maybe.
I think so.
Right after this.
Yeah, that was the one that I was talking about. They
have a very big catalog, which I have never really gone into. I mean, I'm always scared to, because it seems that Crack the Sky, right? That's this title one. And then as you start to move up, you've got, Cut and From the Greenhouse and The Sail. And then all of a sudden Between the Cracks. And I'm thinking, oh my God, Up the Crack, what's coming next? I'll pass. I can't look. So as much as I'm probably going to explore a little bit here and there, because I'm interested. That it's very interesting to me that Rolling Stone made those connections, that thought process. I can't
see. In a lot of my research, I was reading about how progressive that Emerson, Lake and Palmer album was.
It was progressive.
And prog. I was reading prog rock about that, so I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, well, that's progressive keyboardmanship and production, and elongated songs.
I think it's still considered classic rock. I think.
Yeah, I would think it.
I think it was progressive for the time. I promise.
Correct, and that's another thing.
Nobody had heard anything like it at the time. So.
I mean, right now, Muse is progressive rock, right?
Right.
Rush is progressive rock. You can, there's a Queen, which might as well be Muse. So, or Muse might as well be Queen.
And to an extent, I will say with this Crack the Sky album, to your point, Jeff, I didn't see this very progressive. Like when I thought to even recommend this for the challenge, I thought of it as just like, for lack of better words, generic to the era. I thought that was exactly where I was going with this. Was like, it fits the era. It's under the umbrella of probably stuff that you've heard similar of, and just said, all right, that'll roll.
So, from listening to it and growing up in that era, I would have thought that if they were really popular, I would have heard about them back then. Because '75, I was totally into music, you know. But I have never heard of them. Oh, I cannot think of anybody. I know a lot of friends back then that were record producers and stuff, and I never heard the word. So,
there's the big takeaway right there.
Well, and same thing. Like when I was getting into classic rock growing up, I would never have heard of this band if it wasn't for just my dad having played them, and I'm in the right place, right time in this house for him to have done so.
Well,
I wouldn't. No one else brought him up to me.
Because your dad's probably my age.
Just about. I had to
I'm
think about it for a
70.
second.
I'm just about 70. So
he would have been just a little bit younger than you by a couple of years. So yeah. I mean, I would never have heard of them if it wasn't for him though. It's not like I ever had a mutual friend who was into classic rock too saying, "Hey, Crack the Sky." Like no one that I, even in my experience, trying to get into the genre growing up, that never would have heard it.
I want to thank my panelists for bringing these albums into the challenge. I know they both had an interesting listening experience. We would love to hear yours. So please like, comment. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. We'll do this again in 2 weeks with Jeff Young and Alex Kaluzny again, as they have already challenged each other. We're on the web at www.beyondyourradio.com, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Check out the articles on our website. More new shows coming, and plenty of articles will still to come. Thank you and happy listening, everyone.